All right, everyone. I'm really excited to have this guest in today. And of course, Dr. Nicole Panethere, which is a naturopathic doctor and has been my naturopathic doctor for a very long time. Nicole, before we dig into the myths and debunking our self care, I would love if you can give a quick introduction to who you are, what you do, so that everybody knows a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I'm a naturopathic doctor, as Jess mentioned. I have a general practice here in Whitby, and I've been in practice since 2015, so I've been around for a little while. Like I say, general practice, so I treat most things that you would see a family doctor for, everything from digestion to skin, hair stuff, hormone stuff, mental health stuff. I do have a particular focus in chronic pain management. That's what I really love to treat. I love to get my hands on people and fix their chronic pain issues. But I see people of all ages and all different types of lifestyles. And we just basically try to create custom treatment plans for them using natural modalities that's going to optimize their health and make them feel as best as they can for as long as they can.
Well, you do a good job in making
Thank you.
me feel anchored and healthy and feeling good too. And not just me, my family as well. So, we were chatting about this a little bit before of like, what do we want to talk about when it comes to self-care? And one of the suggestions you had was about debunking the myths of self-care. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I feel like that's so important. And even before we even started recording, you started rhyming off some of these things. I'm like, these are great. I can't wait to start sharing these with people. So, when it comes to self-care, what have you seen when it comes to your practice and your clients or your patients?
Yeah, so something, I mean, self-care has become kind of a buzzword. It's become the hashtag that lots
Yeah.
of people have focused on. And especially in the last year and a half, I think it's really been highlighted as something that's important because many people are struggling with mental health and they're struggling with how to navigate this new world that we're living in. And they're needing to fill their cups. They're feeling run down. They're feeling exhausted. They're feeling overwhelmed. And so self-care has kind of become that thing that a lot of people are talking about, which I think is fabulous because people do need self-care.
Mm,
But the way that it's portrayed in the media and, on Instagram and all of these different platforms that we're all using even more now than ever is, the girls' spa day or the lavish
yeah.
vacation or meditating for 3 hours at a time. And for a lot of people, they look at that and say, that's not accessible for me. That's not something that I resonate with. That's not something that I can commit to. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I think that's kind of where that topic came from, is really digging into what is self-care, how can we incorporate it on a regular basis for the average person, and what are some ideas of things that you can incorporate on a regular basis that can become part of your routine and part of your wellness journey.
Yeah. And you had mentioned about the cost,
Mhm.
and it being lavish and hours and stuff like that. Let's talk about that a little
I
bit
think
more.
that's one of the biggest things is people say, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's even especially the last year and a half, people have been losing jobs, people have been cutting back. There's been a lot of uncertainty. Going on a lavish vacation right now is not in the budget.
Yeah.
Committing to a super expensive spa day or buying a really expensive product or something like that and, calling it self-care is not necessary. It's not something that even has to cost you any money for the most part. It's
Mm,
things that you can incorporate on a regular basis that basically fill you up and are care for you. That can be everything from, the relationships that you have and taking stock of those, which I think the last year has really highlighted. Now that things
yeah.
are opening back up and we're seeing people again, who do we really want to see? Who did we not really miss all that much in our world? Who are we craving to spend time with, and who could go by the wayside in our lives would probably be more positive, right? So looking at the relationships and taking stock of those and really honing down who are your people that fill you up and who are your people that are your energy suck. Those people can go. That's self-care. Setting boundaries with people.
Mm,
One of the best things, I can't even remember where I heard it, but boundaries are teaching people how you want to be treated. And boundaries work as a door. So that door, if you're teaching someone how to use that door, that you're teaching someone how you want to be treated, if they're able to do that, then the door is open to them. and that
Mhm.
relationship can continue and things can be positive or not. But when things become not so positive anymore, that door closes. That door's not locked. It's not cemented shut. It's not a barrier. It just means that right now that door is closed to you because on my end of the door, you're not treating me the way that I need to be treated. That door
Yeah.
can open again. So having it be something, setting boundaries, setting healthy boundaries is so huge. And I think as women, especially from a self-care perspective, we're givers. We put everyone else above ourselves. We put everyone's needs above ourselves, whether that's in our work or in our home life, regardless of what that looks like. We put everyone ahead of ourselves. And then we wonder why we get to the end of the day and we're exhausted and drained and overwhelmed because we haven't actually looked at what we need in the day. So
Mm.
setting those healthy boundaries is really important. And self-care is really anything that you ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? And then committing to giving yourself that. So it can be very fluid throughout the day. What you need in the morning may not be what you need in the afternoon. Monday may look very different from Friday, and that's okay. But I think one of the biggest things you can do in terms of self-care is get in the habit of asking yourself, what do I need right now? Do I need to nap? Do I need to go for a run? Do I need to eat something? Do I need to shower? Do I need to be by myself? Do I need people? What is it that I need? And then really the second part of that is committing to giving yourself that as much as humanly possible. Sometimes it's not feasible. If you've got a crazy day at work and a nap is not in your cards, okay. But then you make sure that when you do get home, maybe it's an early bedtime, right? Maybe it's making sure that
Yeah.
your sleep hygiene routine is really on point that night. Maybe it's that you give yourself an extra half hour to sleep in the next day, right? So really, really becoming self-aware and checking in with ourselves, I think is one of the biggest things. And it costs absolutely nothing to do that. It's just a matter of committing to doing it and making it part of your habit, which again, we know it takes time to create those new habits, but
Yes.
really focusing on making sure that you're doing that on a regular basis as much as you can. So self-care does not have to be expensive. I mean, I'm all for the luxurious vacation. I'm all for the spa day. And every now and again, those are great things to incorporate. They're things to look forward to. They're things that I'm sure most of us are going to appreciate much more than we ever did. So, having those things built in too is great. But in terms of taking care of yourself and filling your cup, you don't need them.
Yeah. I feel like just even in that alone was so many golden nuggets right there. We talk about it not being lavish and having to be expensive, but then you also mentioned, you just talked about boundaries with that. You
Mm-hmm.
talked about sleep as a part of your self-care routine. And you talked about, even routines when you talked about morning and night, it's not about having to have it in exactly the same way, the same time from day to day. It's changing it as we are needing it. And the fact that it doesn't actually have to cost some of these things. I wanted to revisit because boundaries come up a lot
They're hard.
in
They're
coaching
hard.
sessions. Do you get that a lot as
Oh, yeah.
well? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Tell me more about what you see when it comes to boundaries, because this is a big topic for a lot of my clients.
So, I mean, like I say, boundaries are tough because again, relationships are complicated. We've
Yeah.
got, we've got, we've got friend relationships, we've got family relationships, and we've got all of those relationships that change our self-belief and change how we interact with people.
Mhm.
And there's so many facets to relationships that setting those boundaries of what you need from that relationship can be really tough, especially when it comes to family and close friends and people that you really truly do care about, but that you've got a long-standing relationship with that may or may not be healthy. And it's been like that for a really long time. So reestablishing a new norm can be really hard when someone's used to a certain way of being treated and a certain way of treating others. So, kind of reestablishing that can be really, really tricky. But I think the biggest thing is having open and honest conversations with those people that are in our lives
Yeah.
and remembering that if they're not open to having that open and honest conversation and adjusting their behavior to help you, because you're supposed to be a person that they love and care about too,
Yeah.
then maybe they're not the person who actually loves and cares about you quite as much as you thought they did.
Yeah.
And it's okay to close that door. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be cemented shut. It's not locked with 9 deadbolts. It's just closed. And it
Yeah.
can be closed as temporarily as it needs to be closed or for as long as it needs to be closed. But I think people again, people put everyone else's feelings and needs ahead of their own. And we worry, am I going to offend this person? Is this relationship going to end? Is this something that we can't come back from?
Yeah.
Which is not generally the case if that
Yeah.
person truly loves and cares about you the way that you think they do. So again, closing that door and just saying, this is how I need to be treated. This is what I need from you. Can you meet me halfway?
Yeah.
And most of the time, the people who really are our people can meet you halfway. If you have that open and honest conversation, a lot of the time it's a small tweak. It doesn't have to be, a total relationship overhaul to set a boundary that's working well for you.
Yeah.
It's okay. And I know as a practitioner, we do it with patients too. You have to set what works for you and what's acceptable in a relationship on your end. And it can't be all give or all take for anybody.
Yeah. And I think
Right?
there's a lot of fear that comes into setting boundaries and the things that we
Huge.
tell ourselves about
Yes.
the consequences of it, that we
Yes.
do have to permanently shut that door on someone. But the concept is that it actually enriches the conversations that we have with these individuals, the communication. Sometimes our partners, our friends, our family are wanting to know better how they can help us, but they don't necessarily know. And having those conversations is so important. And there's actually a podcast that I had done about people pleasing, and it's the same concept. You may be so focused on serving other people, but at the end of the day, if they don't know how to best service you back, that too can also, be detrimental to the relationship. Help them, guide them through how you and what you need for yourself in the relationship.
For sure. And I like what you said about the stories we tell ourselves, because a lot of the time when we're having these really important conversations, we build it up in our head of what it's going to look like, and they're going to say this, and so this is how I'm going to respond. And all of that is totally made up. It's literally a made up thing that you're talking about in your head. And we always jump to the worst case scenario. I'm going to say this and they're going to be super offended, and then it's going to be a big fight, and it's going to be a horrible situation. Okay, we'll flip that on its head. What if we did the what if in the other scenario that you say, hey, this is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'd like you to do. And they turn around and say, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you told me. I had no idea.
Yeah.
This is how we can change going forward. And now that relationship is stronger and better for both parties.
Yeah.
What if that's the scenario and that's the story that plays out, and you were too afraid to have the conversation and you missed out on that?
Yeah. Boundaries.
Right? Boundaries are big. Boundaries are so big. And it doesn't even have to be a huge conversation. Again, we build it up that it's going to be this great big thing. And a lot of the time it can be, could you do this instead?
Yeah.
Right? Instead of doing this would work better for me. And that's it. 30 seconds. And they say, oh yeah, sure. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of calling me at all hours of the night, could you text me instead and I'll get back to you in the morning? Oh yeah, no problem.
Yep.
Right? Like that doesn't have to be a huge thing. Instead of just dropping by unannounced, can you shoot me a text about a half hour before? Oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And for people who can't do that, then that's where the door closes. If someone can't meet you halfway, it's okay to close that door and say, when you're ready to, I'm still here, but I'm not taking your call at 3 a.m. Like that's not working for me.
Yeah. You're like, that sleep that we were just mentioning.
That's not working for me.
Yeah. I need that.
And it's okay to say that. And I think that's the other thing that we kind of fall into a trap with, is we're afraid to express what we need. We feel like we're asking for too much. We feel like we're inconveniencing someone, that our needs and our wants and our desires are not valid for some reason, and the other person's are. Well, that's not the case. In relationships, both parties need to be validated and both parties need to be cared for. So if you're not able to express those needs, you're never going to get them back.
Yeah.
Right. So
I instantly think of the, saying no to be able to say yes to something else when it comes to this.
Saying no. Yes. Yes.
And it's associated with being bad, right? Like
it is.
To say no to something. And I think that is the concept, is people are fearful of saying no, or fearful of missing out because they say no to something, but that they're in reality saying no to something else. And this could very well be saying no to their self-care, saying no to that foot massage, or,
absolutely,
going to see that doctor appointment or whatever it is. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think as long as we're prioritizing that, then that's where the true self-care comes in.
Mhm.
And again, it's checking in, what do you need? There's times where you need to say no, and you
Yeah.
need to say, I'm going to back out of this because I'm not in that space right now, or it's too much right now, or I can't take that on, or whatever that looks like. 2 weeks from now, that may be a yes. And that's okay.
Yeah.
2 weeks from now, you may need to go to that party. You may need to see that person. You may need to, indulge in whatever it is. And that's okay. Self-care is
Yeah.
fluid. And I think that's another big myth on self-care, is that you need to have your self-care plan. And that's the plan you need to follow each and every day for the rest of your life. That's what that's going to look like. No, absolutely not. I know I had, so back when the pandemic first started, I was doing some meditating. I was dabbling in it. I've never been someone who's great at it. So I was like, you know what? I've got some time. I'm going to really commit to doing this. The book, Stress Less, Accomplish More by Emily Fletcher.
Yeah.
Fabulous book for anyone who's looking for meditation resources. She has a whole protocol that you do. And for a couple months there, I did a really good job. I was my 15 minutes in the morning and my 15 minutes in the afternoon, and I was rocking it. And then I went back to work. And then I had a baby. And then I started a new business. There's no meditating happening right now. There is no meditating happening right now. And as much as that's a self-care activity that, yes, it is a good thing for me putting the pressure on myself of having to do 15 minutes twice a day is more stressful than any kind of meditation is going to relieve.
Yeah.
So having that, the concrete plan, it just doesn't work. It needs to be fluid.
It does. It totally needs to be fluid. And even my morning routines are different from day to day
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to that. And I'm curious. So you're not meditating right now. If you were to
No.
reflect on your world, what are you doing right now that you would consider to be self-care for yourself?
So right now, exercise is really big for me.
Yeah.
Like I say, when I had a baby, doing exercise was not in the cards for me. Postpartum recovery, exercise was not in the cards for me.
Yeah.
I'm now at a place that I can exercise again. So I've kind of grabbed onto that. I've made it part of my morning routine. 4 to 5 days a week, I'm committing to that half hour. I'm doing exercise that I love. I'm really enjoying it. And for me, that form of self-care right now is really great because it starts my day off on the right foot. It gets my energy going first thing in the morning, which is an absolute must these days. And I'm starting to feel better in my body and stronger in my body, which is what I need right now.
Yeah.
A year ago, not what I needed, not what I could handle, not what I wanted. It wasn't a part of my routine by any
Yeah.
means. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm doing right now that's super helpful, and that may change, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I almost can hear some of our listeners right now thinking, but I don't have the time for that. And I
Right.
think that is another myth that I think we need to debunk. Let's spend some time with
Absolutely.
that.
Lots
Let's
of
talk
people
about
think,
time.
I need to be meditating for 3 hours a day in order to call
Yeah.
it self-care. I need to be able to devote the hour before I go to bed to my self-care. If you can do that, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But for most of us, that's just not on the cards, and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
If you can do an hour meditation, that's great. If you need to take 5 deep breaths before you leave the house in the morning to get yourself on the right foot, that is self-care. If
Yes.
you need to create the meal plan for the week and you want to prep and do all the things, fabulous. If you want to choose a healthy snack over the chocolate bar, that is self-care. Right. So
Yeah.
it can be as elaborate or as simple as you want it to be. But again, it's asking yourself in that moment, what do I need right now?
Yeah. And, I just finished recording the podcast before this one, where it actually, we also lose time in a lot of places. There
Yes.
are things in our life that suck the crap out of our
Yes.
time that could give us that 5 minutes, if you talk about meditation, or even that 5 minutes to read a book, a
Mm-hmm.
page, or go for a walk during your lunch break. There are so many things that we do that distract us right now and provide and aid the excuses of time.
And I think that's the other thing too, is it doesn't have to be elaborate, but you do need to commit to it. You do need to consciously
Yes.
put it in your day. It doesn't have to be hours and hours and hours, because most of us don't
Yeah.
have extra hours in our day, and that's okay. But it is something that you have to say, instead of waking up in the morning and scrolling on Instagram for 15 minutes, I'm going to get up and go for a walk, or I'm going to do a breathing exercise, or I'm going to journal, or I'm going to read a book, or whatever that looks
Yeah.
like. But again, looking at where your time wasters are and committing to make that time more valuable and make that time something that's actually going to fill you up during the day instead of just being a time suck,
Yeah.
because we all have them. And there's lots of different, strategies to reduce those time sucks, especially if it's social media and technology, which again, I think in the last year, a lot of us have become really reliant on without even being aware of.
Yeah.
And so now that, again, things are kind of becoming a bit of a new normal, it's important to take stock of that and what types of things do need to be there and what types of things don't need to be there. What things can we get rid of and replace with things that are actually beneficial for us, rather
Mhm.
than saying, oh, I don't have time. How much Netflix have you watched recently?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And sometimes your self-care looks like, I need to sit down and I need to just watch Netflix for a couple hours. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But to say you don't have the time, if you're willing to commit to it and it's important, you will find the time, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think an important question to possibly ask when it comes to this is, why am I not finding enough time for this right now? And I sometimes think is because whatever it is they're trying to implement in their self-care is maybe not something that you had mentioned even resonates to them.
Yes.
Right. So it's like they're trying to fit other people's or the expectation of what self-care looks and feels like
Mm-hmm.
into their world that is not fitting. It's like a
That's the
Cinderella
thing.
story, right? That the slipper is not fitting.
Yeah. If you're not a bath person, trying to incorporate an Epsom salt bath before you go to bed every night is going to fail hard because you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
self-care needs to be something that you're excited about, something that isn't the thing you're supposed to be doing that everyone else tells you is self-care. What
Mm,
is self-care for you? What do you enjoy? What fills you up? What gets you excited? Because those are the things that are going to be things that you're consistent with, that it's not
yeah.
hard to implement, that it's not a chore to implement. Self-care shouldn't be something that's a chore to implement.
Yeah.
It's something that you focus on and you are conscious of and you make a commitment to, but it's not hard, or it
Yeah.
shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I think it's, in a sense too, I think self-care is an area where you feel you can get lost in doing that particular thing,
Yes.
that moment in time. I love when it comes to the self-care component and we think of time and we think of what you had just mentioned there. Where do you think, or what do you see with your clients or your patients right now when it comes to things that are working for them right now?
I think physical activity is a big one.
Yeah.
A lot of us have sat way too much recently, and being active and moving your body and getting out and doing things
Yeah.
is important. And again, that doesn't mean you have to go to the gym. That can be going for a
Yeah.
walk, that can be doing gardening, that can be doing housework, that can be anything that moves your body in a positive way that you enjoy is fabulous. um, Food is another big one. Lots of people have really complicated relationships with food and what our feel good foods are and our comfort foods. And for a lot of people, they look at that as self care. Indulgence is self care. Not necessarily. Sometimes it is, and that's okay. But that can't be your go to all the time, that I need to feel better. So I'm going to have some sugar, or I'm going to have some caffeine, or I'm going to have some carbs, or I'm going to have
Mhm.
whatever food it is because I feel bad. And that's how I'm going to medicate. So kind of digging into that relationship with food and where are the positive parts and what needs to be tweaked and how do we do that in a realistic way, because lots of people are jumping on the diet trend right now to get off that quarantine 15, and a lot of diets out there are not self-care. They are restrictive and they have a lot of negative connotations with them. A lot of negative self-talk goes along with them. And I don't think that that's really a positive way to make change. I think it's a very temporary way to make change because it's not motivating. It's not something that anyone can get
Yeah.
excited about when you're saying, you can't have, or you shouldn't have, or you're a bad person for wanting. That's not a good place to be. So I think people are really navigating what food self-care looks like these days, and
Yeah.
kind of trying to create a plan that's going to work for them there. So I'd say those are probably the two big trends that I'm seeing, is the exercise and the diet as two big ones.
And I actually would probably say too, even what you've mentioned that I see in my clients is the self-talk part of it. And I do think
Mm,
that is a huge self-care component, is
huge.
being very aware of what we're saying to ourselves and the environments that are influencing that self-talk. I think is this another comment, a place that you could be working on when it comes to self-care. Like,
Absolutely.
I think of facials and I think of going for walks and I think of all of these things, but there's a part of self care that's also about taking responsibility for yourself. And
Hmm.
like I wrote one thing here is about making those appointments for,
Yes.
those practitioners and committing and going and
Yes.
doing it. When's the last time you had a physical? When's the last time you had the blood tests done? When's the last time that you've actually taken some time to take care of your body inside and out?
Hmm.
Not
Yeah.
about putting the makeup on, but what's going on inside.
Yeah, and we talk about, our relationships with other people and boundaries and all those things, but we also need to take care of our relationship with ourselves.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
those conversations that we've all got the running dialogue that goes in our heads all day long.
Mhm.
And what common themes are you seeing? What kind of pattern, like how are you talking to yourself? When we're talking about setting boundaries and how other people are treating you, if another person said that to you, like would that be okay?
Yeah.
Is that a relationship that you would want to continue? Or is that a relationship that needs some work? And for a lot of people, that relationship needs some work.
Yeah. I think there's another trend too of do. You got to cram as much
Yes.
self care, as much things in your world as you possibly can. And I feel that that's a trend that I see with my clients going through this. And I'm seeing exhaustion when I'm
Mhm.
talking to people about this. And I was like, what if you didn't have as much to do? That on its own could be a way of taking care of yourself.
Yeah. The to do list is massive for most of us. And I think a lot of people derive their value to the world and their benefit to the world by how much they're doing. We are not human doings, we are human beings.
Oh, I love
So
that.
I heard it, I don't remember where I heard that, but I was like,
That's good.
yes, we are. But we're so focused on all of the do, and accomplishing so much in our day and getting so much done. And our value and our worth is how productive we are and how busy we are.
Yeah.
The hustle culture and the busy culture that we live in, it's not self-care. That is not good. I deal with a lot of burnout in my practice, people with adrenal fatigue, people who have been burning the candle at both ends for too long, and eventually their body says, enough, I'm done with you,
Yeah.
we're crashing, we need to rest. So prioritizing rest and not feeling bad about it, I
Yeah.
think is something that a lot of people need to work with, because again, we're made to feel bad about resting. You're lazy, you're unproductive. What are you contributing? Well, if your cup is empty and you're totally burnt out, what are you contributing? Nothing. Absolutely
This,
nothing. if
uh,
if you're gonna show up in the world as your best self and contribute all of the wonderful gifts and geniuses that you have, you need to be on top of your game to do that. If you want to show up for your family and you want to show up for your friends and you want to show up for your coworkers and you want to show up for the world, you can't be someone who's burnt out and exhausted all the time. And it's okay to say, again, say no.
yeah.
I need to prioritize me in this moment. What do I need?
Yeah. And I feel like that is almost a simple way to kind of stop with and wrap up with our today's
Hmm.
session is, keeping it simple. And what do you need to say no to say yes to for yourself when it
Yep.
comes to self-care? And what is it that you need for you, not other people, for you?
Yeah, and it's going to be individual for different people, and it's going to take some trial and
Yeah.
error. You may try some things and be, I'm not a meditating person, and you try it and say, hey, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm doing really good at this. I found a system that works for me. Fabulous. Go with it. And if 6 months from now it turns into something totally different, that's also okay.
Yeah.
There's no right way to do self-care. There's no checkbox that you need to figure out. There's no instruction manual. It really is trial and error, but at the base of it, it comes back to, what do I need and how can I commit to doing that today?
I was just thinking the same thing, Nicole. You had mentioned about that commitment part of it is like you're committed to making it work for you.
Mhm.
And I think there's almost two different sides to this because you talked about fluidity
Mhm.
and making sure it's fluid. And it's different from commitment. It
Yes,
changes, but the idea is you're committed to adapting and making those changes that you need as you go and
absolutely.
communicating it as you go too. I think is an
Mhm.
important part.
I agree.
Yeah. Nicole, before I leave you, I, wanted to see what would be the best way for someone to get in contact with you. And I will make sure that that's all in the show notes too. But how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm on all the major social media platforms, nicole.panethere.nd for Facebook and for Instagram.
Okay.
And you'll put it in the show notes so people know how to spell my last name, which is not always easy to spell.
Yeah.
And then my website, nicolepanethere.com.
All right. And tell me a little something that's exciting for you right now.
So I'm actually in the process of opening a multidisciplinary wellness clinic, which
Woohoo.
has been the dream for many, many years. And you and I have talked about that so many times.
Yeah.
So it's finally happening. It's finally something that's concrete and being built this minute. So I'm hoping in the next month or two that that's going to be open and up off the ground and running. And it's going to let us kind of serve the community in a whole different way, and kind of bring all of the complementary healthcare practitioners into one spot so that people can have one hub where they can, get the support they need on their healing journey, whatever that looks like. So
Yeah.
that's very exciting.
A bit of self-care coming everybody's way when it comes to
Yes.
your practice.
Yes.
And what do people need to know right now? Is there anything out there that they need to know about you guys and what you have going on?
No, I would say just stay tuned. Stay tuned on the social media
Okay.
platforms and on the websites. There's going to be lots of announcements coming. We've got lots and lots of ideas of different things that we're going to be implementing, and programs that are coming, and workshops and all those kinds of things. So stay tuned on the announcements for that, because there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming in the next little bit.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
Chris, I love to end this off with asking one fun question. Nicole, if you were an animal, what would you be and why?
I think I'd have to go with some kind of bird, some
Yeah.
kind of like bird that, like maybe a hawk, because hawks just kind of float up in the air and they can see everything that's going on. And they always just seem so chill and so like in their own little world doing their own little thing. But they're also super, powerful, and they're kind of badass animals too. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's go with a hawk. I like that.
Well, Nicole, honestly, thank you so much for visiting us tonight and being able to do and share your wisdom. Of course, I encourage every one of you guys to, check out her links that are going to be in the show notes again. Get in touch with her. She would be an amazing support base for you and your healing journey and your self-care. Nicole, soar and enjoy the perspective up high in the sky for us today.
Thank you for having me, Jess. This was awesome.